Dear Sir, I am writing in response to your request for additional information in block number 3 of the accident reporting form. I put poor planning as the cause of my accident. You asked for a fuller explanation, and I trust the following details will be sufficient. I am a bricklayer by trade. On the day of the accident, I was working alone on the roof of a new 6-story building. When I completed my work, I had some bricks left over, which, when weighed later, were found to weigh 240 pounds. Rather than carry the bricks down by hand, I decided to lower them in a barrel by using the pulley, which was attached to the side of the building at the 6th floor. Securing the rope at ground level, I went up to the roof, swung the barrel out, and loaded the bricks into it. Then I went down and untied the rope, holding it tightly to ensure a slow descent of the 240 pounds of bricks. You will note on the accident reporting form that my weight is 135 pounds. Due to my surprise at being jerked off the ground so suddenly, I lost my presence of mind and forgot to let go of the rope. Needless to say, I proceeded at a rapid rate up the side of the building. In the vicinity of the 3rd floor, I met the barrel, which was now proceeding downward at an equally impressive speed. This explains the fractured skull, minor abrasions, and the broken collarbone as listed in section 3 of the accident reporting form. Slowed only slightly, I continued my rapid ascent, not stopping until the fingers of my right hand were 2 knuckles deep into the pulley, which I mentioned in paragraph 2 of this correspondence. Fortunately, by this time I had regained my presence of mind and was able to retain my grip on the rope, in spite of the excruciating pain I was now beginning to experience. At approximately the same time, however, the barrel of bricks hit the ground, at which point the bottom fell out of the barrel. Now devoid of the weight of the bricks, the barrel weighed approximately 50 pounds. I refer you again to my weight. As you might imagine, I then began a rapid descent down the side of the building. In the vicinity of the 3rd floor, I met the barrel coming up. This accounts for the 2 fractured ankles, broken tooth, and severe lacerations of both of my legs and lower body, as detailed in section 3. Here, my luck began to change slightly. The encounter with the barrel seemed to slow me enough to lessen my injuries when I fell into the pile of bricks. Unfortunately, there were only 3 vertebrae that were cracked. I am sorry to report, however, as I lay there on the pile of bricks in pain, unable to move and watching the empty barrel 6 stories above me, I again lost my composure and presence of mind and let go of the rope. The empty barrel, weighing more than the rope, immediately returned to earth. This explains the 2 broken legs as detailed in section 3 of the form. I trust this additional information is sufficient to answer your questions as to how the accident occurred. Yours truly, etc., etc., etc. This morning's theme is a little unusual, and I suppose you could say that Ellie chose it. At the auction last fall, Cynthia and I were scheming about how to get Ellie back up here. So we asked her to pick out a few songs, more or less related thematically, and then we would write to that. She came up with acceptance, and that's really the first word that I ran with. So that's how we got to now. I'm just delighted to be playing off of her singing this morning. This is quite a treat for me, and for you, but mainly for me. So the story I read this morning comes to me by way of Tara Brach. Anybody ever heard of her, Tara Brach? A couple of you? She's interesting. For the rest of us, she's a practicing psychologist in the DC metro area and a well-regarded teacher of what I call Western Buddhism or insight meditation. Anybody heard these terms? Here we go, lessons for everybody. She's terrifically popular, and her classes at the River Road Unitarian Church in Bethesda are some of the most well-attended sessions like this in the country. She gets hundreds of people that come every time she gives a talk. The story of the hapless bricklayer came from her talk about her recent book, which, surprise, surprise, is actually called Radical Acceptance. It's possible that this story is an example of the consequences of not being present, a topic I'll come back to shortly. But the problem that Brock is really trying to solve is a rather pervasive one. And at the risk of amputating the meaning right out of her philosophy, I'll try and be brief and just say this. We need better tools to disrupt our natural fight, flight, freeze reflex and give ourselves the time to respond and not merely react. Respond instead of react. Here's the problem. When your strongest emotions are roused, anger, fear, anxiety, disappointment, loss, despair, the angels of your better nature effectively go on vacation. When you're all stirred up, all of those high-minded thoughts like do no evil, love your neighbor, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a worthy human being. All of that goes out the window. Now what's left is the lizard, and the part of the brain that kind of lashes out, the part that does and says incredibly dumb and hurtful things, the part of our brain that runs the feet, ends the conversation, and blocks people on Facebook. This is the part of the brain that nails our tongue to the roof of our mouth, robs us of that totally awesome comeback, and leaves us just sitting there blinking like an out of order sign. Not our finest self. Now, our inner lizard, as you know, is an evolutionary leftover. We can make fun of it, and we probably should, but it is what kept our ancestors alive back when the number one concern was don't get eaten. But I think it's safe to say that these fine survival traits, fight, flight, freeze, these deep reflexes may be so well suited to the savanna, the tundra, the forest, the jungle, and perhaps are slightly less well suited to email, social media, the dinner table, the traffic jam, or the ballot box. Nevertheless, they persist. Some of you might remember a workshop that we had here at UUSG a little while back with Kern Beer, the Difficult Conversations Project. Anybody remember that? Just nod. Yes. Okay, good. It's a good workshop. It's a good book too. In that workshop, Beer used the model of the hand. And in that model, our thumb, right, is the lizard brain, right? Which, to be perfectly fair, is just a hair or two more evolved than the average alligator, right? Evolution has tucked it all beneath our conditioning, our higher functioning, our better selves, all encoded in that prefrontal cortex, right? So now you have kind of a brain. But when something bad happens, when life throws you that curveball, an interaction that you expected to do one thing goes sideways, someone says something wrong on the internet, you get insulted or threatened or harmed, we hear about a tragic event or an epically moronic decision or policy or law, someone posts a Marjorie Taylor Greene video, and boom, there goes our lid. What Beer is trying to show us is this: when we lose it, we lose access to that prefrontal cortex, right? When we're flipped, we actually lose compassion. We lose emotional balance, response flexibility, moral reasoning, intuition, empathy. That's quite a list. And for Beer, that is why difficult conversations are, well, difficult. When we're flipped, we are really very far removed from our best selves. But there's more. Beer made the additional connection that we humans, and we Americans in particular, we identify with our opinions and beliefs. That is, we believe that we are our beliefs, or that our beliefs are us. Our opinions, our faith, our politics, they are in some way fundamental, physical sense. They are us as much as a finger or a friend. And so when we lose, when those beliefs are attacked, we react. Sometimes we react violently. He quotes the physicist David Bohm like this: Quote, the natural self-defense impulse which we got in the jungle has been transferred from the jungle animals to these opinions. In other words, we say that there are some dangerous opinions out there just as there are dangerous tigers. But there are some very precious animals inside of us that just have to be defended. So an impulse that makes sense physically in the jungle has been transferred to our opinions in our modern life. Okay, so that's the problem. Basically, we're a bunch of alligators ready to jump out of our human costumes at the slightest provocation. While this may be an exaggeration for some of you, I'm hoping that the illustration goes at least a little ways towards understanding why it's not always easy to bring your best self, your most compassionate self, your most insightful self forward, whether at home, in your relationships, at work, or heaven forbid, whenever you open up Facebook. Now, both Tara Brach and Kern Beer have suggestions on how to flip your lid back on, to interrupt your lizard before it does something you're going to regret. For both of them, it's the same key, though. It's mindfulness. Many of you are familiar with this Buddhist practice. Anybody practice mindfulness now or ever? Yeah. The idea is both very simple and terrifically challenging. To become intensely aware of the present moment, your feelings, your emotions, your situation, your right now. And doing that unlocks all manner of good things. I'm reminded of my favorite Kung Fu Panda quote, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift, which is why it is called the present. The present. What mindfulness gives us is one possibility for transcending our wiring, not a guarantee, a possibility that is not necessarily comfortable or simple or intuitive. But if you're able to manage it, mindfulness brings a kind of acceptance that is, in a word, radical. For Tara Brach, radical acceptance invites you into a new relationship with your lizard brain, to interact with your emotional responses instead of being swept away by them. You could say that once you see the wave, you have become the ocean. It starts by observing yourself, specifically you observing that you are having an emotion, not just feeling angry, but maybe even saying out loud, I am angry, I am experiencing anger. Sounds weird. But you see that when you do this, when you put yourself outside, when you separate yourself from it, you can separate yourself from it, at least in part. For example, you experience an emotion, then you just pause and you realize that you're having your emotion. And then you can accept the fact that you're having it. And with that, perhaps you can buy yourself enough time to flip your lid back on. You just have your emotion without your emotion having you. Easy peasy, right? No, not really, right? This is always much easier to say than do, and I just want to acknowledge that. But I also want to acknowledge that I am not great at this. I think it is important for me to be clear about this with myself too. I mean, every time I come to a four-way stop sign, all my friendly neighbors start cheerfully waving each other to go first. Anybody ever see this phenomenon? Seriously, what is all of that? You go. No, you go first. No, after you. No, I couldn't possibly. You go. Yeah, no, you, yeah. I have no idea what's happening. I go right through. Oh, he's so rude. Where's he from? Rudeville? Yeah, cheese and crackers. After 40 years of living in DC and driving in DC, traffic just makes me anxious, period. It just does. As many of you know, I have a relationship with my wife and partner for 25 years. We've been together. And as anyone who's ever been in that kind of long-term relationship, you will understand me profoundly when I tell you that all of those years have been completely and utterly without any drama of any kind. But selfishness has been an occasional topic of conversation, and more than once, I wish I could have been less defensive. Once upon a time, I was out of work for 6 months. Landing my next job took an enormous number of interviews. It was grueling. I still have stress dreams about job interviews. But I remember this experience, this particular feeling I had of total worthlessness. No one wanted me. All of these experiences, or experiences like these, disappointment, defensiveness, denials of self-worth, despair, all that is in my own past. And that's because, well, sometimes it really is the case that life has it in for you, or at least that feels that way. I just get flipped, like everybody else. I get flipped. I find myself on that pile of bricks of my own dubious decisions. The living of life is an exercise in riding the waves and weathering the storms, with us all hopefully growing just a bit more rugged, a bit more resilient, a bit more something. Singer Brandi Carlile says it this way, and I'm not going to sing it, Ellie, I'm sorry. All of these lines across my face tell you the story of who I am. So many stories of where I've been and how I got to where I am. Life leaves a mark, and perhaps that's the difference between living your life and merely surviving it. But I want to offer that at least some of the lines in my face didn't have to be there. I could have chosen differently. I might not have been able to avoid pain or misfortune or loss, but perhaps I could have avoided just a bit of the suffering. I've lost track of the number of arguments I didn't need to have, the blood pressure spikes I've self-inflicted, the comebacks, brilliant though they were, that I then regretted, and insults I didn't have to offer or accept. I have found that mindfulness meditation has helped some. As I've said before, I'm not very good at it. My friend Bhante Sujatha once told me that while he was very glad I was practicing meditation, that maybe I should try it without napping. But that is why meditation, why mindfulness is almost always referred to as a practice. And to be very blunt, this is exactly why we have a meditation practice here at UUSG in person every Sunday night. Check out the order of service for those details. For most of us, practice is required for progress to occur, for growth to actually happen. Some rare few of us are born with the ability to just flip our lids back on and go on about our day. But for the rest of us, it's practice that makes perfect. And for those of us for whom practice is clearly out of reach, practice might at least open the door to better, and hopefully, well, maybe that will be enough. So as I turn to the close today, two things. One, practicing mindfulness is in no way a replacement for professional therapy. In our modern world, medical science has come a long way, and the tools available to you today can be revolutionary and life-changing. I would never want to suggest otherwise. And two, I'm also reminded of our monthly Soul Matters theme, resistance. With that in mind, I want to offer that being more mindful, that us accepting our having of our emotions and attempting to move beyond mindless reaction, none of that means we must accept our fate. We don't need to resign ourselves to mistreatment or abuse or become accomplices to harm and hate and fear, not at all. The point of accepting that we are up-jump lizards with some serious software limitations does not require disengagement or giving up. That's important. Acceptance is not giving up. Acceptance gives us the opportunity to choose to do more, to be more than the puppets of our fears, our situations, or our past. To be truly engaged in the work of transformation, personal, interpersonal, communal, societal, I believe our struggles deserve our best selves. And to be quite blunt, we have enough alligators in the pond already. If you find yourself at a traffic stop or having some coffee with someone you love, or someone you used to love, confronted with a Marjorie Taylor Greene video, testifying for common sense gun control policies, or holding on to the end of a rope that you just tied to a swinging barrel of bricks. Wherever it is that your day takes you, may you know that it really is you, with all of your you-ness, that the world needs most right now. More, I think your family, your friends, and the world around us all deserves more than your reactions. It deserves all of you, because all of us need all of us to make it. And if you want to practice with us, the door to the church will be open tonight at 6 p.m. Amen.
Visit us at uusg.org.